I still remember the moment the judge looked at me, then down at the paper in his hand, then back at me again. His eyes narrowed, and I felt something inside me drop slow, heavy, like a stone falling into dark water. That was the moment I knew something was wrong. And not just wrong, but twisted, hidden, planned behind my back. But let me take you back to where all of this began. My name is Daniel. I grew up in a quiet town in Ohio. My parents raised me on simple things. Be honest, work hard, treat people with respect. I carried those values with me my whole life. I wasn't rich, but I built a small software business that slowly took off. And by my early 30s, I was finally living comfortably. That's when I met Emily. She walked into my life like sunlight breaking through clouds, warm, gentle, impossible to ignore. She had this soft laugh, the kind that made everyone else laugh too. People loved her instantly. And honestly, so did I. Emily was charming, thoughtful, and unbelievably persuasive in the sweetest ways. If she wanted something, you found yourself wanting it too, almost without realizing it. At first, I thought that was part of her magic, part of what made her so unforgettable. We started dating, and everything felt perfect. We fit together easily, almost too easily. I'd never been in a relationship that smooth. No big fights, no tension, just long drives, shared meals, and future plans that felt like they were already written for us. But even the smoothest river hides rocks under the surface. The first red flag wasn't loud. It was small, almost silent. I noticed she always liked having the final say. If we planned a trip, she picked the place. If we bought something for the house, she chose the style. If I disagreed, she'd smile and say, "Trust me, babe. I know what works best." And somehow, I always ended up agreeing. At first, my friends joked about it, how she seemed to guide every part of our lives. But one night at dinner, my sister pulled me aside. She said, "Dan, you sure you're not giving up too much control? She seems strong-willed." I laughed it off. Because when you're in love, the truth feels like an inconvenience you don't want to deal with. I told myself it was normal, that couples made compromises. But over time, those small compromises started stacking up like bricks. Until suddenly, I couldn't see over the wall they built. 6 months later, I proposed. She said yes before I could finish the sentence. We celebrated with family and friends. Everyone clapped, smiled, cried. And for a moment, I believed my life was heading exactly where it should. Then came the conversation I didn't want to have, but knew I needed to. The prenup. Wanted it mostly because of my business. I'd worked hard to build it, and I needed to protect it. I explained it gently, expecting tension, maybe even anger, but Emily just smiled and said, "Of course, babe. I understand completely. It's the smart thing to do." No hesitation, no questions, no pushback. She was almost too agreeable, but I told myself I was lucky, that I had found someone who trusted me enough not to make it a fight. We sat down with a lawyer, drafted something fair, truly fair for both of us. Everything transparent, everything clear. Emily nodded through every page, touching my arm and saying, "I trust you." It felt so pure, so honest. Looking back, that moment should have scared me more than it comforted me. The day we were supposed to sign the final version, she suggested something unexpected. "Babe, you're slammed with work. Why don't I take care of the notarizing? Just to save you time." She said it with that gentle, caring voice, the one that made me feel safe. I hesitated. For a split second, something inside me whispered, "Don't." But love is loud, and doubt is quiet. So I handed her the documents. I watched her tuck them neatly into her bag, give me a kiss, and promise she'd get everything done by the afternoon, and I believed her. Why wouldn't I? We got married a month later. Beautiful ceremony, beautiful vows, beautiful future. At least on the surface, but the truth? The truth was already sealed in an envelope I never saw. Again, the truth was already waiting for me in a courtroom months later, darker and more twisted than anything I could have imagined, because the prenup I signed, the one I reviewed word for word, the one I trusted her to notarize, was not the document the judge read in court, not even close. And that was the day everything shifted. The strange thing about betrayal is, you almost always see a tiny warning before it hits. You just don't want to believe it. When Emily and I first sat down to create the prenup, everything felt honest. It was me, her, and a calm middle-aged lawyer in a small office in downtown Columbus. The kind of place with dusty bookshelves and a coffee machine that never stopped humming. I remember looking at Emily and saying, I want this to be fair. I don't want you to ever feel like I don't trust you. She smiled, squeezed my hand and said, I know, babe. This is just to protect what you built. And to protect both of us if anything ever happens. It's smart. I'm with you. We discussed every line. My business would stay mine. Anything we built together after marriage, we'd share. If we ever separated, she'd still get support, but not control over the company or the house I had before we met. It wasn't one-sided. It wasn't cruel. It was fair. Even the lawyer said, honestly, this is one of the more balanced agreements I've seen. I went home that day thinking, this is what trust looks like. Two people planning for the worst, while believing in the best. If only I knew. The final version of the prenup was emailed to both of us a week later. I read every line carefully, twice. I even printed my own copy and highlighted key parts, just to be sure nothing had changed. That copy, the one I printed myself, would become very important later. We scheduled a time to sign and notarize the prenup. It was supposed to be simple. We'd meet at the lawyer's office, sign in front of a notary, and walk out with everything official. But the day before the signing, I got hit with a work crisis. A client system crashed, and my team needed me. I was already running late, stressed, and trying to fix things on the go. That's when Emily said the words that still echo in my head. Babe, don't worry about the prenup. I'll handle the notarizing. You've already signed your part. I'll take the documents, get them notarized, and we'll be all done. I'll drop the final copy off at the lawyer's office. She said it casually, like she was offering to pick up groceries. I hesitated. Are you sure? I can move some things around. She laughed. No, Daniel. You're saving your client's whole system. I think that's more important than watching someone stamp a paper. I've got this. She made it sound so reasonable. So caring, so harmless. So I signed my copy. She slipped it into a folder with the other pages, kissed my cheek, and said, I'll take care of everything. And just like that, the most important legal document of my life walked out the door in her bag. The first sign that something was off came a few days later. I asked, Hey, did everything go okay with the notarizing? She didn't look up right away. Yeah, all good. It's at the lawyer's office. It was a small pause. Barely a beat. But I caught it. Then I told myself I was imagining things. I said, Cool, I'd like to get a scanned copy when you get a chance. She replied a little too quickly. Why? Don't you trust the lawyer? I blinked. It's not about trust. I just like having copies of everything. She forced a little laugh. You and your papers. I'll ask them when I'm free, okay? I've just got a lot going on right now. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. That was the first time she felt protective about the documents. Not protective in a good way. Protective like someone hiding something they're afraid you'll see. And again, that quiet voice inside me whispered, something isn't right. But I pushed it away. Because love makes you doubt your instincts before you doubt the person. The wedding came. It was beautiful. Outdoor venue, soft music, warm lights over our heads. She looked like everything I'd ever wanted. For a while, married life was good. Almost like before. We traveled, we laughed, we posted smiling pictures that made us look perfect. But slowly, very slowly, something in her shifted. She started asking more questions about my business. Not loving, curious questions, but strategic ones. How much did you make this quarter again? Why are you paying your team that much? Do you really need to reinvest so much into the company? Money became a frequent topic. And not in a let's build our future together way. More like, how can I position myself better kind of way. She wanted joint everything. Joint accounts. Joint access. Joint cards. When I suggested keeping some accounts separate, just basic financial safety, we argued. She said, what's the point of marriage if you're going to hide things from me? Hide, interesting word. Especially coming from someone who had carried our prenup out of the house alone. Month by month, the warmth faded. She became distant, sharp, calculating. Little fights turned into big ones. I was too focused on work. I was too protective over money. I was treating her like a stranger. One night, after a huge argument, she said, maybe we rushed into this. That was the moment I realized we weren't building a life anymore. We were managing a contract. Eventually, the word separation stopped being a threat and became a plan. We agreed to time apart. She stayed with a friend. I stayed in the house alone, walking through rooms that suddenly felt colder. My lawyer called and said, we'll need a copy of the prenup to move forward. Ask her or the firm for it. Simple request, right? I emailed the law office. They sent back a scanned version of the signed prenup. I opened the file on my laptop, expecting to see the same clauses I had highlighted months before. But as my eyes moved down the page, my chest tightened. My business wasn't protected the way I remembered. The property division looked completely different. Her support wasn't just fair, it was massive. And entire sections I clearly remembered were gone. Line after line. This didn't match what I'd signed. I scrolled back to the top. Checked the names. The date. The signatures. There was my name. There was her name. There was a notary stamp, but this was not my version. The document I was staring at, the one the court now recognized, was something else entirely. And in that moment, I realized the real hidden switch hadn't happened in our marriage. That had happened long before. On the day I let her walk out with our future in her bag, I stared at the prenup on my laptop screen, and for a moment, I honestly thought I had opened the wrong file. I scrolled back up, then down, then up again. No. It was the right document. The signatures were there. The date was correct. My name. Her name, but the content? Not even close to what I had signed. It felt like the floor shifted under me. My hands actually went numb as I read line after line, each one cutting deeper than the last. My business wasn't protected anymore. Her financial benefits weren't just increased. They were inflated beyond anything we had ever discussed. Even the property section looked like it belonged to a completely different couple. My original safeguards gone. Her advantages multiplied. It was like looking at a version of my future that someone else had written for me. Someone who didn't care what it cost me. I remember whispering to myself, this can't be real. This can't be real. But it was. The next day, I drove to her friend's place, where she was staying during our separation. I wasn't planning to fight. I wasn't planning to yell. I just wanted answers. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, but not nervous. That should have told me everything. I held up my phone and said, Emily, this isn't the prenup we signed. She blinked, slow and innocent. What are you talking about? This version, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, is different from the one we drafted. Entire sections are changed. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe. Then she gave me this look, cold, sharp, like she was offended I'd even bring it up. "Daniel," she said, "are you seriously accusing me of tampering with a legal document?" I swallowed. "I'm saying something doesn't match, and I need to understand how that happened." She scoffed. "You probably don't remember what you signed. You were stressed back then. You said yourself you were dealing with a big work situation." That hit me harder than I expected. Because deep down, a tiny part of me feared that maybe she was right, that maybe I had overlooked something. But no. I remembered that night too clearly, the highlighters, the sticky notes, the printed copy. "I know what I signed," I said quietly. "This isn't it." She suddenly looked hurt. Like I stabbed her. Her voice trembled perfectly, dramatically. "I can't believe you think I would do something like this. After everything I've given to this marriage? After all the trust I put in you?" Trust, that word felt like a slap. Before I could say anything else, she said, "If you're going to accuse me of this nonsense, then maybe you should talk to your lawyer instead of attacking me." And she closed the door, not slammed. Not angry, just closed, calmly, like someone who knew she was safe, or someone who knew the truth would stay buried if she kept her cool. I drove home in silence, my mind racing. Everything felt wrong. Everything felt cold. Everything felt planned. That night, I tore through old emails, old folders, old backups, anything that might still hold the original prenup we had reviewed. At 2:17 a.m. Buried inside a random archive folder, I found it. The digital draft. My draft, the version I had highlighted. I opened it and felt a wave of relief, followed by anger, followed by something heavier. This was the real one. The one she and I finalized. The one I trusted her to take to the notary. And now, I could see exactly what she changed. Her version didn't just adjust small details, it rewrote the entire agreement in her favor. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional. A betrayal signed in ink. The next morning, I met with my lawyer. I showed him both versions, the real one and the altered one. He looked at them for less than 2 minutes before saying, "Daniel, the signatures on this altered version look copied." I felt something inside me twist. "Copied? What do you mean copied?" He pointed at the screen. "Your signature has no natural variation. It's identical down to the pixel. That usually means it was lifted from another document." My stomach dropped. He kept going. "And this witness signature? Who is this?" I shook my head. "I've never heard that name in my life." My lawyer leaned back. "I want you to understand how serious this is. If someone replaced pages after you signed, that's manipulation of legal paperwork. And if a witness didn't actually sign it, that's another issue entirely." I pressed my palms to my forehead. I felt sick. But in that sickness, something sharp was forming, something solid. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't forgetting what I signed. I was being played. I spent the next 2 days digging deeper. Phone records, email timestamps, anything I could find, and then I discovered something that froze me completely. The witness listed on the prenup? A supposed notary assistant? She didn't exist. My lawyer tried calling. No answer. We searched the address listed. It was a UPS mailbox. That's when everything inside me went quiet. No yelling. No arguing with Emily. No begging her for the truth. Not anymore. I realized something important. Confronting her wouldn't fix this. She had already rewritten the story once. She would do it again if I wanted justice. If I wanted the truth to finally come to light. I wouldn't confront her. I'd expose her. I didn't sleep the night I discovered the truth. I just sat in my living room, staring at both versions of the prenup, the real one, and the one she had turned into some twisted roadmap to take everything I had built. But shock slowly turned into something sharper. Not anger. Not fear, clarity. A calm, focused clarity I hadn't felt in months. If she thought she could rewrite my future, then she clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to warn her. I was going to build a perfect counterstrike. Quiet, precise, unstoppable. The next morning, I went straight to my lawyer's office. He's a practical guy, always wearing the same gray suit, always speaking in a calm, teacher-like tone. But when I laid out everything I found, even he raised an eyebrow. "Daniel," he said slowly, "this isn't a mistake. This is deliberate document manipulation." Hearing those words felt like a punch to the chest. Even though I already knew it, there was something chilling about a professional confirming it. We brought in a legal consultant who specialized in fraud cases. Together, they examined everything: the signatures, the dates, the formatting, the stamps. That's when the consultant pointed something out, something tiny. Something I would have never seen. The timestamp on her version, he said, tapping his laptop, was created weeks after you signed your part. My jaw tightened. So she replaced it. He nodded. Looks that way. And these paragraphs here. The wording is copied from a different legal template. Not the one your lawyer uses. Piece by piece, the truth showed itself. This wasn't just a small change. This was a full rewrite. But if I reacted emotionally, she might sense it. She might panic. She might try to cover her tracks. So I did something that felt almost impossible. I stayed calm around her. I answered her texts with short, neutral replies. I didn't bring up the prenup. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't hint that anything was wrong. If she saw me, she saw the same tired, stressed-out husband she had left behind. And she bought it. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was building a timeline, every date, every message, every email. My lawyer and I pieced together her movements from the week of the signing. We traced receipts, digital logs, even the calendar app she shared with me. And that's when another huge crack appeared. The notary she claimed to have used didn't exist. The name didn't match the listed address. The address led to a tiny storefront that had no notary services at all. It was like the person was created out of thin air. So we dug deeper. We checked her phone location history. And that's when the real breakthrough hit. On the day she told me she was going to the notary, she wasn't at the address she wrote on the document. She was somewhere else entirely. A strip mall 20 minutes away. A place with several small offices, including one old, run-down notarization booth with security cameras pointed straight at the front door. I called the building manager, pretending I needed access to footage for a personal paperwork dispute. He agreed, apparently. People lose documents there all the time. Later that afternoon, I watched the footage with my lawyer. And there she was, my wife, walking in with the prenup folder, walking out 10 minutes later, alone, no witness, no second signature, no official stamping. The truth wasn't just obvious, it was recorded. My lawyer leaned back and let out a long breath. Well, Daniel, this is more than enough to challenge the document. But I wasn't done yet. We prepared my original prenup again, this time fully authenticated. Properly stamped, witnessed, and documented with a clear chain of custody. Every detail was flawless. Every signature verified. Every date locked and my lawyer handed it to me in a sealed folder. Bring this to court. This is your shield. Shield. Funny word. Because for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I needed to defend myself. I felt ready. Ready to bring everything into the light. Ready to show the truth. Ready to let her face what she created. As I walked out of the office, the evening sky was dark, heavy, full of clouds. But I didn't feel the weight of it. I felt something else. Something steady. Something powerful. The final showdown was coming. And this time, I wasn't the one who would be left speechless. I walked into that courtroom with my heart beating, so hard it felt like it might shake the floor beneath me. Everything I had uncovered, everything she had done, it was all leading to this moment. But when I glanced across the room and saw Emily, I froze. She looked calm, confident, almost victorious. Her hair perfectly done, her posture straight, her eyes steady, like someone about to collect a reward they'd been promised, and maybe she really believed she would. Her lawyer, an expensive, sharp-tongued attorney, smiled at her as if this was already over. I took my seat beside my lawyer, who leaned toward me and whispered, "Stay calm. Let the truth do the talking." I nodded, but my hands were cold. The judge entered and the room instantly stiffened. We rose, then sat again. The case began. Emily's lawyer stood first, adjusting his tie with the confidence of a man who thought he already owned the winning card. "Your Honor," he began, "we have a clear, legally signed prenuptial agreement that outlines the financial obligations in this separation. The document is complete, notarized, and certified. There is no ambiguity." He spoke smoothly, walking the judge through the altered prenup like it was the most legitimate thing in the world. Then he turned to me, just for a second, with a smug smile. A smile that said, "You have no chance." Emily even wiped a fake tear from her eye, acting as though she were the heartbroken victim in all of this. I almost laughed at how rehearsed it looked, almost, but I kept quiet. Like we planned. When the judge finished reviewing their argument, he looked at my lawyer. "Your response?" My lawyer stood slowly, almost casually. He opened his folder, tapped the top page, and said, "Your Honor, what they presented is not the original agreement." Emily's lawyer scoffed. "Of course it is. We have the notarized version right here." My lawyer nodded politely. Then his voice shifted, quiet but sharp. "Let's start with the witness." He held up a page. "This signature," he said, "belongs to a person who does not exist. The address attached to the name is a rented mailbox. We confirmed there is no licensed professional, resident, or employee with that name anywhere in the state." There was a rustle in the courtroom. People whispering. Emily stiffened. My lawyer continued, "And the notary? The one who supposedly stamped this document. We contacted the notary office. They have no record of this appointment. In fact, the notary listed hasn't worked there for over a year." Emily's lawyer frowned. "That's impossible." But my lawyer wasn't done. He projected both prenup versions onto the courtroom screen. "Next," he said, "let's talk about the signatures." He zoomed in. "This signature from my client Daniel is copied. Perfectly copied. No natural variation. The exact same shape, pixel for pixel, as another document he signed earlier. That means it wasn't written. It was lifted." Gasps filled the room. The judge leaned forward. Emily looked down, her hands shaking slightly, and now my lawyer went on. "The timestamps." He clicked to another slide. "This prenup was supposedly notarized on June 3rd, but the document's metadata shows multiple edits made weeks after that date, including entire paragraphs that were inserted from another legal template." Emily's lawyer sank a little in his seat. "And finally," my lawyer paused, letting the room go silent. He clicked play on the screen. Security footage. There she was, Emily, walking into that shabby strip mall notary booth. Alone, no witness, no official signing. You could almost hear the entire room inhale at once. Emily's head dropped. Her shoulders folded inward. Her eyes darted around like someone searching for an escape hatch. The judge's face hardened. "Mrs. Clark," the judge said, "stand." She stood slowly, trembling. "Do you understand the seriousness of altering legal documents?" he asked, voice stern, echoing across the room. Her voice cracked. I didn't alter anything. There must have been." She couldn't finish. Every lie she tried to speak collapsed in her throat. Finally, the judge lifted my original prenup, the one we authenticated. Notarized properly, documented cleanly. This, he said, is the valid agreement. He read sections aloud, each line matching the version I remembered, my real version. By the time he finished, Emily was sitting again, face pale, completely broken under the weight of her own actions. The courtroom was silent. Then the judge spoke the final words that sealed everything. The court recognizes the original document. The altered version is invalid, and further investigation will determine any consequences of its manipulation. My chest loosened. My mind cleared. For the first time in months, I felt relief. Not because I won, but because the truth finally stood on its own, and she, the woman who tried to rewrite my life, had nothing left to stand on. When the judge finished speaking, the entire courtroom felt different, lighter somehow, like the air had been cleared after a long storm. He ruled her altered prenup invalid. He stated firmly, almost sharply, that the document showed clear signs of manipulation. Hearing those words, I can't even describe the mix of emotions that hit me. Relief, shock, sadness, vindication, all of it, swirling together in a way that made my chest feel tight. The judge added that her actions could lead to further legal review, possible consequences for tampering with certified paperwork. She didn't even lift her head when he said it. She just sat there, staring at her hands, as if everything around her had suddenly collapsed, and maybe it had. When the session ended, people started filing out quietly, whispering to each other. Some looked at me with sympathy. Some looked at her with disbelief. I stood up slowly, letting the truth sink in. I'd won. Not out of ego, not out of pride, but because the truth stood exactly where it needed to, out in the open. Still, winning didn't feel as sweet as I thought it would. My lawyer shook my hand. You handled this well, Daniel. Take some time for yourself now. I nodded, unable to get a single word out. My legs felt heavy as I walked toward the exit. When I stepped outside, the sun hit me like a warm shock. Bright, real, almost too real after everything that happened inside that courtroom. I exhaled slowly, feeling a weight release from my shoulders. But before I could take another step, I heard someone call my name. It was her family. Her mother, her sister, 2 cousins. They walked toward me with stunned expressions, as if they were seeing an entirely different person than the woman they had supported. Her mother said quietly, We didn't know. We had no idea she would do something like this." Her sister shook her head, eyes red. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. She never told us anything about this." I believed them. Not because I wanted to, but because betrayal spreads like a shadow. It doesn't just touch the person targeted. It falls over everyone connected. I said gently, "I don't blame you. This wasn't your fault." They looked at me with relief, then stepped aside. Right as Emily walked out of the courthouse behind them, her face was pale. Her eyes were puffy. But the moment she saw me, something inside her hardened. She walked straight up to me. "This is your fault," she whispered angrily. "You embarrassed me. You humiliated me. You ruined everything." I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I saw the truth clearly. Not the charming woman who laughed at my jokes. Not the soft voice that once felt so comforting. But someone who had fallen so deep into her own ambition that she couldn't even see herself anymore. "Emily," I said quietly, "I didn't ruin anything. You made choices. I just showed the truth." "Truth?" She snapped. "You think you're some kind of hero?" I shook my head. "No, I think I'm someone who finally stopped pretending." She opened her mouth again, but I stepped back. "I'm done fighting with you," I said. "I'm done trying to fix things you broke. I'm done losing myself." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just stared at me confused, angry, and strangely small. Then she turned and walked away, and I let her. The weeks after the trial were quiet, almost eerie. My house felt empty, but in a peaceful way. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. I went to therapy. I talked to my oldest friends again, the ones I had drifted away from during the relationship. I spent long evenings walking by the river, letting my mind clear itself slowly, like fog lifting from water. Piece by piece, I rebuilt myself. I let go of the guilt. I let go of the anger. I learned how to breathe again. And one morning, sitting at my desk with sunlight spilling over scattered papers, I picked up a pen, not to sign a prenup. Not to sign anything tied to fear or control, but to sign a new contract for my company, an expansion I had been too distracted to pursue, a new chapter, a new direction. A fresh start. As the ink dried, I leaned back in my chair and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Because sometimes the most important papers you sign aren't the ones someone else tries to twist. They're the ones you write for yourself. If there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't always explode into your life. Sometimes it walks in quietly, smiling, gentle, disguised as love. For the longest time, I thought betrayal had to be loud. But mine wasn't. It came in small moments, soft words, and little choices that didn't feel dangerous until they stacked into something enormous. Looking back now, I can see every sign I ignored. The way she insisted on handling things herself. The way she turned conversations into guilt trips. The way my instincts whispered warnings I pushed aside because I didn't want to believe someone I loved could twist the truth that deeply. But ignoring red flags doesn't make them disappear. It just gives them more room to grow. After the trial, I found myself replaying everything, every moment I had trusted her. Every time I had stepped aside thinking I was being considerate or loving, I realized something painful but important. Trust isn't something you give blindly. It's something you protect, the same way you protect your health, your work, your future, and self-respect. That has to come first. Because when you let someone step over your boundaries once, they rarely stop there. For months, I thought confronting her would fix everything. That if I argued harder or explained more clearly, the truth would magically straighten itself out. But that's not how people change. That's not how truth wins. The moment I stopped trying to convince her, and instead let her actions expose themselves, that was when everything shifted. Revenge didn't come through anger. It didn't come through shouting or dramatic confrontations. It came through patience, through evidence, through calm persistence. It came by letting the truth stand on its own, and sometimes, that's the strongest revenge there is. There were times the whole ordeal felt like it would break me. I'd wake up with a heaviness in my chest. I'd sit at my desk and wonder how someone I once held so close could twist something so important. But slowly, day by day, I learned something else. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about understanding why it happened, and choosing to grow beyond it. Therapy helped. Talking to old friends helped. Even sitting alone with my thoughts, letting the silence wash over me, helped in a way I didn't expect. I started to recognize the parts of myself I had dimmed for her. My confidence, my independence, my ability to say no without feeling guilty. Piece by piece I took them back. One evening, months after everything had settled, I sat outside watching the sunset turn the sky a deep gold. For the first time, in a long time, I felt a kind of peace I didn't know I needed. Not because she was gone, not because I won, but because I survived something that tried to break me from the inside. And I came out standing. Trust will always be important to me. But now, I know the value of boundaries too. I know the importance of listening to my instincts, even when they whisper quietly. And I know that the truth, no matter how long it takes, always has a way of finding its voice. If there's a lesson I carried forward, it's this. You don't lose yourself by walking away from someone who lied. You lose yourself by staying. And sometimes the most powerful revenge is living a life that isn't defined by the person who tried to rewrite your story. As the sun dipped below the horizon that night, I felt my shoulders relax. The past was finally behind me. My future felt open again. And with a deep breath, I whispered the words that finally set me free. I choose peace. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next twist, the next betrayal, or the next moment justice finally wins. Hit like, drop a comment, and share your thoughts, because every story has a lesson, and your voice keeps this channel alive. Until next time, stay sharp, trust wisely, and protect your peace.